and I'm looking at like these vendors, just they're selling items on the street. People are walking and doing life as normal. And yet, we're here, we think we're in this war zone, and we are, but yet there's majority of people are just doing life like normal. And it was just I struggled to make sense of it all, because we see what the media paints, and it's this little picture, this little corner of the room. And you think the whole nation's like that. You think everybody's like that.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Family Business with the Alessis. It's so good to be with you today. And today I want to get right into our podcast with a gentleman that has been a distant friend. And just recently, we have had the opportunity to connect our ministry with his ministry and throw some love and support their way. And because of that, and maybe even a bigger joy for me, is that he is a multi-generational ministry guy, and he understands the power of legacy. So Jason Law, so good to have you of World Compassion. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Pastor Steve. Awesome to be able to be on this with you, and an honor to talk about this with you.
Yeah, this is great. Now, let me get right into it. First, from your perspective, here's who I'm talking to. Jason Law is the president of World Compassion. It was founded in 1969, the year after my wife was born, by his father, Dr. Terry Law. And that's what I remember the first time I met you, Jason, was, wait a minute, that name sounds familiar. World Compassion, that name, what's the deal here? And I learned that you have stepped right into the role there that of a ministry that your father started.
Yeah, 54 years this year. And so obviously I wasn't here at the beginning. I think I look younger than that, but yeah, honored to be able to carry the legacy onward.
Oh, yeah. Now we're going to hit that in a little bit, but I want people to get to know you first on the front end here. You're a graduate of Oral Roberts University, and I think they did pretty good last year in their college basketball team. So that was a good thing for you. You and your wife, Beth, have children, Addison, Logan. You're there in a great church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is another reason why we had to connect. And that's Guts Church with Pastor Bill Shear. We love Bill. And you enjoyed time with your family. You have some good connections and friendships with Chris Hart, who we adore. And I mean that. Got a little man crush on Chris because he's so good to my son, Christopher. So appreciate that. And of course, you're an outdoor kind of guy, which you have to be if you're going to hang out with Chris. So that's you personally, man. Tell me a little bit about your family.
Yeah. So Beth and I, we've been married 18 years. In a couple of weeks, June 4th will be our 18th anniversary.
Congratulations.
And she is my no drama mama. I mean, she as steady as can be. Sometimes I have to fight to help her have an opinion. Some couples talk about they get in arguments where they're going to go eat. I can't get her to tell me where she wants to go eat most of the time. So she's amazing. She really is a godsend. And the further we've gotten in marriage, I've realized she's a blessing for my personality and makes life fantastic. So I love her. We just want to bless her more and more. One of those things where I wish I could do more for her just because how much she does for me. And two amazing kids. Addison, my daughter's 14. She's wrapping up finals this week in her 8th grade year. So she's about to become a freshman.
Yep.
And so we're a year and a half away from driving here. So Steve, you got any pointers on that? That's right on the horizon. And then my son, Logan, is 11, about to turn 12 this August, and is going into the 6th grade. Loves to play football. Just bought him a new set of golf clubs last weekend. So we went and played with those this weekend. And anytime I can get in the golf course and spend some hours with my kids, I enjoy that.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you're in a good season of life, Jason. Those kids at that age, I know it's not easy. You got a lot going on between juggling the job, juggling the marriage, juggling their activities, their responsibilities, all of those things that they require of you. But that is a great season for you. You need to embrace that.
Yeah, thank you. We're trying to, and definitely learning, man. It goes, they tell you it goes by fast. The days are long, the years are short. And that statement couldn't be more true.
Yeah. You know what happens? It's interesting because now I have a grandchild, a 1-year-old granddaughter, and we have my son, Chris, is going to be a new parent soon.
Oh, wow.
And it's so interesting because the end of the day, when they get to drop our little grand girl over at the house, the mindset is so different. Whereas when I was in my 30s and my 40s, it was like, gosh, I got to get everything done. And I had zero time, really. It was an inconvenience to sit down and look at the kid, talk to them, watch things they wanted to watch on TV, be around there. It was so easy to be distracted and pulled away that now I'm sitting there on the couch and I know I got something to do, but it's like, you know what? I can do that tomorrow. I'm not going to miss out on these few moments. So you'll see these moments where you're enjoying your kids. They're just, God bless you, man. And evidently that's the kind of environment you were raised in, because your dad was a pretty awesome guy, founding World Compassion and all that you were able to see growing up over the years. You evidently loved what you saw in your dad because you loved the ministry that he started and loved the God that he served.
Yeah, one of the things that my dad did so well was created experiences for us kids, and both in private life and in ministry life throughout our childhood growing up. So we have 6 siblings and 4 sisters, and then my brother and I, so there's 6 of us. And so every other summer, one summer would be the boys' trip to go overseas to one of the countries we were working in with Dad, and the next summer would be the girls' turn to go over. But it was ministry, but there was always fun. There was always room to go see a site or go experience something in another country, after the trip was over. And then at home, the summers we were camping with our family, our extended family, and, having golf, betting on the golf course. It's like milkshakes after the first 9, or whoever's going to, something was on the round of golf every time, and just made it fun. I mean, we got to experience so many things. I think by the time I left the home, I'd lived, a lifetime because of that. And I desire that for my kids. It's so bad. I just want to expose them to everything that I was exposed to. So he did that very, very well.
Yeah, that is so cool. Now, was he stationed right there in Tulsa as well?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So he was the first graduating class of Oral Roberts University.
Come on.
Literally in 1969. So when Oral first started the university here, my dad came down from Canada. And so he's originally from Canada, came here and lived most of his life right here in Tulsa. So we're based here. I was born and raised here, and this is home.
That is cool. Where did you meet your wife?
Guts Church, sub 30 college, the college
No
church
way.
there that our kind of group started. And we were youth leaders together. We went to ORU together, but never knew each other. I was still, I was a PK's kid. I knew all the right things to say. I had the right connections, but I was still an idiot through college. So it was good I didn't know her then. And we had a lot of mutual friends, but we connected at Guts Church in sub 30, and now we're married.
Wow. That is, and Sheer married you?
Yeah. Well, Pastor Bill and my dad comboed the wedding. Yep. So we had both. I consider Pastor Bill my spiritual father. I mean, they are spiritual parents. They really raised me in our 20s and 30s, and get to serve as elders there now and honor them and the legacy that they've had in our life as well.
Yeah, I want to come back and talk about him a little bit because I think the world of him. But that's great. So you met your wife at church, which I love. Now you mentioned PK, and some of my listeners here in our podcast, that's kind of foreign. What does PK mean? Us growing up in the church, especially my Assembly of God days, understanding PK.
Yeah.
But what does PK mean? Explain that.
It means you're the business owner's son, is what it means. In other terms, like you're the heir of what's coming up. You're the preacher's kid. You're the pastor's kid.
There you go.
For my dad wasn't a pastor, but he was a preacher. He preached all over the world. And so, we were the kids.
Yeah, that's it. You were drug everywhere. You had to be that perfect example. And you always felt the pressure of it. And some people took it as a challenge and said, you know what, I can do better in my life. And I enjoy this pressure.
Yep. So and that comes with some responsibility and some favor all at the same time.
Yeah. Well, you can't get the favor without the responsibility. And once they start demonstrating and our family, we try to, my motto of leadership is we lead by example, not by parking space. So whatever we do, we always have to be that example. And, that's a lesson to learn, because we just don't get that. Adults don't get it, let alone our kids trying to get it. So
Yeah.
thankfully, we have a church environment, and you evidently were raised in one, where there's a lot of grace given to the ministers' families until they actually get it and mature and grow up and understand it. And then once they do, they're given a platform that they can just continue to build their life on, which is what I embrace. And we'll hit that a little bit about legacy, but let's talk about your pastors for a minute, because Pastor Bill Shear, Sandy, great people. Saw him a couple of weeks ago at a wedding. One of the few guys that I think if I needed somebody, especially when he was younger, if I needed somebody to fight for me, I think I would have called him.
What kind of fight are you talking about? Because I could go either way. Okay.
Both. Physical or spiritual. I love that.
Yep. He is the guy. He is a fighter. The name of the church is Guts, and people are like, what does that stand for? And it's like, it doesn't stand for anything. It just means it takes guts to serve God. And it's just fitting. It's just so fitting. A lot of times I think with him, he can be in your face, especially early on when us guys, when we're younger, we can kind of be a little bit more aggressive and in your face. And he still has that at 65, I think is what he is right now. But inside of that man is a huge heart for people. And if you can see that, and that his motive for the aggression maybe that sometimes he gets labeled under, it's because he is fighting for you. He's fighting for the people he's preaching to. He's fighting for the people that he loves, because he knows God's promise, and his purpose is to help other people fulfill their purpose. And he doesn't want to see the enemy rob that from anybody. So sometimes he gets in your face about it, but it's from a motive and a huge heart of love.
Yeah. He's probably, I'm trying to quickly run through some others in my mind who reach out to me. I think he is the only pastor friend that I have that reaches out to me first. He's the one who always reaches out with a text or a call. Most I have to reach out to and ping and get their attention. He has me somewhere there. He's the guy that reaches out, and it's always the right time. And anytime I see it, I'm like, oh, shoot, he beat me to the punch. I don't like that. I missed it. I want to make sure I'm reaching out to him. So he's a great guy, which I could see just even in your passion to serve. Let's talk about World Compassion for a minute, because you took Dad's leadership, you were handed the reins, you evidently earned it. Tell us about World Compassion, because we're partnering together and being able to provide Bibles to Iran. So tell us more about what you do.
Yeah. So for 54 years, the MO, the mission of the organization has been to take the message of Jesus to nations that are hostile to the gospel message. And so that can be hostility from the government, it can be hostility from society, but that's been our focus. So over the years, like in the early 70s, my dad was, they were in Russia. We started as a music group called Living Sound out of Oral Roberts University, and young people went and used music as missions before that was even like a thing. I mean, I think there was a movement there in the 70s, obviously, but so they traveled to Russia. They were doing concerts in communist nightclubs, interrogated by the KGB. Joel Visanin, who's actually sitting in the office over here, he's worked for my dad, worked for this organization for 54 years. He was in that room when that happened. Talk about, legacy. So our mission has been to empower the local church and nations hostile to the gospel. So, today we're targeting countries like Iran, Iraq, China, Myanmar. We do a little work in Cuba. You guys were instrumental in helping us connect there to Cuba. Afghanistan's been a country we worked at largely in the past and still have some footholds there. So, but our heart is to empower the local church there. We really believe that God places us in the body where it pleases him. And I think a lot of times in Western missions, we can think, it's up to us to go into all the world and preach the gospel. And we read that from like one place, one center, and that's our own place. But that truth is also applied to everybody else around the globe, even the map behind me. Any other Christian that reads it anywhere on the map carries that same mission. And so we really want to help them reach their Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. And so we've really come alongside local churches in those countries to empower them, equip them, train them, resource them, encourage them to go do what God has shown them to go do to reach their nation. They understand the language, they understand the culture, they understand the predominant religion in their country better than honestly I ever will. And probably most
Mhm.
missionaries, even if they spend a lifetime, it's just, they've grown up in it. And so
Yeah.
God's placed them there. We still got to go, don't get me wrong, but it's just the model. I really believe in the local church model and empowering them. And we saw that prove out during the pandemic. We didn't miss a beat. I couldn't
Mm.
travel and go over there, but we have staff in some of these countries. We've got long standing partnerships with local churches in these countries. And so we were able to pivot some of our outreaches to help meet the needs of those people during that time. We were able to keep some of the programs going without missing a beat because it was local church based.
Yeah. So how many outreaches or how many countries are you serving right now?
5 countries right now: Iran, Iraq, China, Myanmar, and Cuba.
Wow. Powerful. And tell us about Iran, because our church was able to
Yeah.
show some love your way financially to try to get in Bibles there. So explain how that whole outreach is working.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for your generosity. It's very, very timely. I just came back from the Middle East where we were hosting our annual leadership conference for Iranian pastors. So we bring them out, bring them to another neighboring country, fly them out, put them up in a nice hotel. It's a time of getting out of that heavy environment they're in, just
Mm.
refreshed, to be poured into. Um, they're under some of the tightest restrictions, especially now with what's going on in that country over the last 6-9 months. If people are watching news, they've seen some protest in the streets, ladies waving their scarves out in the streets. And a lot of those rights that the people feel like they don't have or have been taken away from them, those are rooted in Islam and an Islamic
Mm.
ideology. And so some of the social unrest over there is also an unrest from Islam. And so we're seeing, and what we're hearing from leaders on the ground, and even statistically what we're seeing, is a lot of people are moving away from Islam in Iran right now. That doesn't mean they're running to Christianity,
Right.
but what they have seen, the regime, the Ayatollahs, and how they have led that nation, there's a generation of people that don't want to have anything to do with that. They saw ISIS, they saw radical
Mm.
Islam, and they don't want to associate with that. And so we see in the media the narrative that comes from the Iranian regime, which is only the minority in the top echelon of Iran. It's not representative of the Iranian people. Most of Iranian people, this is from the mouths of Iranians who live there, they like America, they like the British, they like the Jews. But we hear a different narrative from the
Yep.
minority. So they are
Hmm.
turning, which has created a huge opportunity for the church to reach people. Christianity and Islam are very two close religions in the sense that we believe in one God.
Yeah.
And so, and
Mm.
they believe that Jesus is he's a prophet. So there's a bridge here, and there's an opportunity in history for the body of Christ to reach. And so these Bibles that we provide, we're putting these in the hands of Christians, just like anybody in your church or my church, because religion is such a hot topic right now in the country, and people are
Yeah.
asking questions about religion. They can hand them that Bible as a gift and say, hey, read through this, and then let's talk about it. And we have hundreds of stories over the years of
Yeah.
people reading through the Gospels and coming to a conclusion themselves that the God of the Quran and the God of the Bible are two different gods. And the God of the Bible is the true God of peace. He's the true God of love. And people coming to that decision point and giving their life to the Lord because of it.
Oh, that's powerful, Jason. Because if we believe, when we as a believer, we hold that Bible in our hand, we to this day, even though we've read it multiple times throughout our life, every time we open it, something comes new to us. It's just spirit inspired. Now imagine the person that's sitting there who God so loves, that is lost. When they open up that Bible, what the Spirit does to them, this is foreign. Amazing how that Bible speaks to them and breathes life into their spirit, which can radically change their lives.
Absolutely. The Bible says his word is life to those who find it and health
Mm.
to all their flesh. It literally breathes life to the person, and that's what draws them to it. I mean, I've had several Iranian people at our conference this last month or 2 months ago now. One of the worship leaders there, he got saved by reading through the Gospels, and he just said, when I started reading that we're supposed to love our enemies, he goes, what kind of
Mm.
God is this? And he
Yeah.
goes, that was the one true God.
Wow. Well, we're thankful for the opportunity to have a place as a church to be able to sow into people that, and Jason, I try to do everything on my end. I try to do it through relationship. That's a big thing. It's what our church is all about. It's all about when we Sunday, what the 3 R's: relationship, relationship, relationship. Relationship with God, relationship with each other in our church, relationship with those outside of our church walls. We try to live that. It's not just a slogan that we throw around, which then causes me to make even decisions that we do with regards to, as a church, who we sow into. And I immediately, the first time that I met you, we didn't have a long conversation, but your spirit was one that was immediately infectious, in the sense that there was something genuine there. There was something real. And Chris Hart made that connection through the relationship not too long ago. So that relationship door right there was opened up to you. And that was the beginning of why we knew, okay, this could be something. And you and I probably had, just a small greeting from time to time. How you doing? Good, great. But as we watched from afar, what you at World Compassion were doing and your connection with family and legacy, it was a no-brainer for us. And thank you for keeping us informed. You were staying in touch, just keeping our church family informed of what's happening with World Compassion. And we want to be a support system along the way to you even more. And so let's transition, because part of what we talk about here in the family business is the family business. And our business happens to be ministry. And you better better have an understanding of business if you're going to operate a ministry, which I so appreciate the integrity behind ministries like your own, because somebody understands the business aspect of it. So let's talk for a minute about how this whole worked out. You mentioned that you have family members, 6 of you. Are other family members serving in World Compassion with you today?
They are not today, and over the years at times they have been, but today it's just me in terms of the children or the siblings that are involved.
Yeah. So what made you pick up the torch here with your dad's ministry?
I didn't want to. So I've always thought I would go into business and I would be the guy that would make money and fund the kingdom. I had a great job offer with a large oil company in college. I had my own lawn and landscape business coming out of high school and in college. And so I always thought I would be the entrepreneur. And in 2003, I was graduating from Oral Roberts University. The war, if you remember, with Iraq had just kind of ensued that year. I remember at spring break, my senior year, watching it unfold on TV. And my dad asked me, he goes, "Hey, what would you like for a graduation gift?" And as I mentioned earlier, growing up, every other year we'd go overseas with them. Well, through college, I never had time to really do that. I was working a lot in the summers. And so I said, "I'd like to go to Iraq with you." And I could tell he was like, "That's interesting." I was thinking like a new set of golf clubs, a new set of skis, or, something like that, which I probably in hindsight should have done that. But in some ways it worked out. But it really wasn't, Steve, from I want to go on missions.
Yeah.
Honestly, at that point in my life, it felt dangerous and there was an adventure. And I mean, I was 23 and I was like, let's just go. I just want to go. Like, it seems crazy. And I hate to say it, but I think that was about as shallow as my motive was to go. But on that trip, there was an afternoon that we had off. And I remember we were staying at the Sheraton Hotel in Baghdad, right in front of the square where Saddam's statue was, the images back then of it being pulled down. And Fox News was in the hotel, CNN was in the hotel, the US military had barricades all around it. We had tanks, Humvees, US military everywhere. And this was May 8th, 2003. George W. Bush declared the war over May 5th. And we had drove 12 hours with about 13 Suburbans all the way from Amman, Jordan, across the deserts of Iraq, through the Fallujah Triangle. If you remember, that was the hotbed for several months following the initial war being over. Went right through Tikrit and into Baghdad. Buildings are still smoldering at night. There's still pockets of war taking place. And so one afternoon we had a break, and I'm up in my hotel room and I'm out looking down, and I'm looking at like these vendors, they're selling items on the street. People are walking and doing life as normal. And yet, we're here, we think we're in this war zone, and we are. But yet there's majority of people are just doing life like normal. And it was just I struggled to make sense of it all, because we see what the media paints, and it's this little picture, this little corner of the room. And you think the whole nation's like that. You think everybody's like that. And it was
Right.
just like so eye-opening to me. And I just felt impressed in that moment, having those thoughts. I felt God speak to my heart. I want to use your giftings for this. And
Mm.
it was an oh shoot moment of what does
Yep.
that mean? And so spent the rest of the summer. I decided not to go into the job offer I had. They held it for me actually. And it was August of that year. I just looked at my dad and I said, I feel like I'm supposed to come to work for you. And he was like, great, I'll call Ben. Ben was our office manager at the time. And, he asked for a 3-year commitment. I committed 3 years and I wanted to quit every year. And I definitely wanted to quit at 3, and, a lot of details and stories there, but hung on, and here
Yeah.
we are today.
My gosh. How long did you work alongside of your father?
So I came on in 2003, and then we officially transitioned. The board transitioned official in 2014. So 11 years of
Wow.
just really serving his vision. But he did so many things very well. I mean, there's a lot of lessons we learned in hindsight of what went well, what didn't go well. But
Sure.
there was a lot of years before we transitioned. He let me drive it like it was mine, even though it wasn't
Mm.
mine.
Yeah.
And I give him kudos for that. That was wise.
Yeah. Wow. That in itself, excuse me, that in itself, just working alongside of your father. Some of your greatest blessings, I'm sure, in life came from that, but sometimes your greatest burdens came from that because you had a father who was a father to you. He was a spiritual leader as well in your life, but he was also your boss. How'd that happen? How'd that work out?
Oh man, that's a bag full, Steve. Yes, all of those dynamics, and I mean, family business is family business.
Yeah.
It's not always easy. There are very challenging Thanksgivings and Christmases, and um, it. You learn a lot in that, and there's times where I missed it. I missed how I communicated with my dad, and there's times I think he missed it. I think we just do, as we grow up and you get through it, and it's like, man, we could have done better at that.
Right.
I list. There's a lot of conversations I wish I had back, even though I might have been right. I didn't have the right tone. I didn't have the right approach. It wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right place, and it wasn't running in front of the right people. So, um,
So you took some liberties as a son that you wish you never did, huh?
yep, that's one of the lessons I learned. I mean, there's in transition, what I say to, and I feel like I have a platform now to say this because I am one, but what I would
Right.
speak to business owners, kids, you have favor, but you cannot walk in entitlement mentality. There's a difference between favor and entitlement. And
Good.
entitlement is, man, I'm next. I deserve this because I am the son, or I am the daughter. And I'm not one that believes that. I don't
Yeah.
believe that. I
Good.
believe that you're favored. I believe you're going to have opportunities others won't have. I believe you might get the first opportunity, but your attitude and your heart approach and how you step into that opportunity is critical. And if you begin to realize that you have favor, which means you have greater opportunity than others, but you take that servant leadership mindset within that framework and you say, okay, how can I use my favor to help others on the team, to help others in the business accomplish what they have been set there to accomplish? Now you're beginning to walk in true leadership.
Hmm.
And you earn the respect. Honor is given, respect is earned. You earn the respect of your peers, of your platoon. And ultimately, the platoon will pick the platoon leader. And I think that
Mm.
in God's kingdom business, that's how it works. I think pastors, Pastor Steve, you're going to speak to this. They're the most fired individual ever. People leave the churches all the time. They church hop, and in essence, they're firing the guy that is pouring into them because people pick their pastor.
Mm.
People choose what church they're going to go to. I mean, ultimately, they should be obedient to the Lord, but my staff, they don't have to work here. They could walk in and say, man, we don't like you, we're out. And so what
Hmm.
I say to kids is, man, recognize you have favor. Don't walk in an entitlement mentality. You got to earn
Very
it.
good. Yep. Talking about people leaving the church, I always say this. I say, listen, you can't leave this church except for a moral failure. If I have a moral failure, then you have permission to leave. I won't ask you to stay. I'm sorry. I won't ask you to stay. If there's a moral failure, you got every reason to leave now, but you can't leave because of my management. My management is going to be something that the Lord's put in me to try to handle, to lead this group. Just like I don't step in and ask you to question you about managing your business. Don't come in and question me about managing the ministry. And if we disagree on management, that's fine. That's just something that I've got to carry because God says this is the work that you got to do. So you can't leave because of my management. You can leave because of my morals if I happen to break any. So you're right. You can get fired very easy by people as pastors. But what I love is, you mentioned honor. And I think honor in life gives us something, Jason, that money can't give us, gifting can't give us, even anointing can't give us. When you have honor and you demonstrate that in the environment with especially if you're working together as a family, if you can keep honor in front of all of those minute by minute, hour by hour decisions and actions and conversations, if you can always follow honor, then we're going to be able to navigate through some tough terrain as a family, even working together. And I just try with my kids, man, more than ever. I'm thankful. I'm 62. Christopher is 32, right about 32. And I'm very grateful. He has a heart for this. He got some bad advice from some people one time. And he'll tell you to this day, it was the worst thing that he did. And he had to separate himself from that kind of influence. But the advice was, hey, have a plan B, Christopher. Have a plan B when it comes to working with your father. And Chris was like, Dad, I don't even want to think like that. I'm in this for the long haul. Who goes into a career thinking I've got a plan B in a sense to lose? Who plays a game thinking I've got a plan B to lose? No, we got plan A. And we're going to kill it for the best of our ability. And if we happen to miss it here or there, that's fine. We're going to get back up. But plan A is always going to be the goal. Did you ever have a plan B?
No, plan B is an exit ramp. It's for quitters. And you can't have success in legacy ministry and not have commitment. And commitment doesn't have a plan B. I love Pastor Bill's definition of commitment or covenant is you've entered a room with no exits. That means when it gets tough, you got to figure it out. Yeah. So I didn't have a plan B. There's times I thought, I'll be honest, I was like, man, do I need a plan B? What would a plan B be? But I never had one. It was, I have other interests. Don't get me wrong. Like I've got my real estate license. I like real estate, but it's not a backup plan. My mission was this. And it's to build on the legacy of my father. Do I have vision? Yes, I've got my own vision. And that's another topic in, living in the shadows of the man that you're following or trying to follow his footsteps versus carving your own path. There's something to that. But the Bible also says you need to serve another man's vision before you can go accomplish your own vision. So
that's right.
You've got to be committed to it. And you're not going to be successful in transition if you're not committed. You've entered a room with no exits.
Yeah. And on that whole vision aspect there, I recognize that a vision is for a generation. There's always a generational vision that is needed. One thing that I asked my kids to do not too long ago was give me not a vision of me and your mom as founders of this ministry, but what is our mentality? Because the mentality of the founder is what sets a culture by which the vision could then be planted and then nourished in growth.
That's
and
good.
That culture never changes. You don't want the culture to change from generation to generation to generation, or is it's as though everything that you've built, now we got to go back in, bust up the old foundation, try to build something new. Well, you'll never get strong constantly breaking up the foundation. Yeah. So the founder's mentality, which is the culture that's created what the next generation steps into, doesn't change from generation to generation. Vision does.
Man, you're helping me right now in my leadership because the mentality aspect. My dad had, and it's funny because him and Pastor Bill, I think are cut from the same cloth. I mean, it was just like, just tell me no, and that gives me the reason to go. Matter of fact, the first time we went into Iraq, the U.S. Embassy told us you should not go, do not go. It's too risky. Well, that was the very motivation that we needed to take the risk to go. And, Pastor Bill went to Bible school because he was told he wasn't a Christian long enough, so he couldn't go. So he forced his, so that mentality And I believe for, business owners, people who are in transition, for us in the kingdom business and what we're doing in ministry right now, that is what's needed is, man, we're going to do things that people say can't be done. We're going to do things that most men would believe impossible. That's what God's called us to do, is to go take dominion, to subdue, to take authority, to take ground, to move in. I mean, you have to have a mentality. And that is so true. I talked to my staff about that the other day. I said, this is who we are. Like when a local church or one of our partners overseas says, well, we're not allowed to do that because of X, Y, and Z. That's the moment you need to start digging your heels in the sand and take a spiritual posture of, wait a second, we're called to go storm the gates of hell. So they can't keep us out. So we got to take that mentality and we got to invest it into other people that we're partnered with in order to build and to continue growing on top of what's already been laid. I love that.
Where did you get that?
My dad. That is my dad's mentality. He was, and that's what also made transition hard. I mean, the person who has got that mentality can be stubborn, can be hard-headed, but that, strengths out of weakness, strengths out of balance are your weaknesses. And, if we don't balance those, but the good of that is we do things that most people are like, wait, how do you do that? Like, we use drug smugglers to smuggle Bibles into Iran. They're smuggling opium out of Afghanistan. These guys will smuggle anything. And now they're asking for permission to take Bibles. And a few of them have given their life to the Lord now because of it. I think it's who Jesus would partner with. So people are like, well, it's illegal to move Bibles into Iran. You're not allowed to do that. Well, we're going to move the gospel forward, whether the man thinks we're allowed to or not, by any means necessary, without hurting somebody,
Well, sadly, I've seen some young guys, young as in 40s, step into their dad's ministry that the father has built and established for 30, 40 years. And the young guy gets in there in his late 30s and 40s and thinks, well, hey, I'm going to change the name. I'm going to change the focus. I'm going to change. They immediately start to create change. And what they forget is that right there, all the changes is not the mentality of the founder who said, listen, we can't change the course of what we're headed. The money may not be there. The people may not be there. The opposition is strong, but we're not going to change course one bit. We're going forward in what God has called us and commissioned us to do. So they have a mindset, or the founder's mentality was one of rock solid, stay in the fight. Don't you dare quit. Send the ships back home. We're going to stay here on this island. We're going to establish a new era. And there's no change. But yet the next generation comes in and they immediately discard what the founders' generation had as one of staying in there. We're not changing. We're going to do our deal. They immediately discard that by saying, let's start making changes.
Yeah.
And it leads to failure.
100%. And so I am that person. Not that I've done that. I haven't done that, but I am in my 40s. I'm 43 now, and I've been officially at the helm for 9 years. And there are things, my dad and I had these conversations, like I'll share some vision that's in my heart. And one of the things he told me is, and I appreciate this, he said, hey, if that's where you feel like God's leading us, you need to get us positioned to go there. I mean, it was the most empowering statement back to me. But timing factors into that. You rock the boat too quick, too fast, it can mess up. You got a following, you got people who are supporting you for something. So you've got to be careful in the timing of that. I believe the mission doesn't change, but methods and how we get there do change. And sometimes you got to change slowly. I think there's that book, Who Moved My Cheese, speaks to that a little bit, just some little incremental changes over time. But there's also an honor principle there and realizing, hey, we were created for this purpose as an entity, as an organization. This is our mission. It's not going to change. How we do it may change, but let's be thoughtful, careful, and honoring when we do make those little changes in the methods.
Yep. Well, we just started a reconstruction of the church that I left, my mom and dad's church. I left after working with my dad for 13 years. I came over to another part of the city here in Miami, only to go back 8 years ago and help my mom and dad retire out. Now, I never thought I'd go back to that old campus, but I did after all those years. And it wasn't for me. I didn't need another campus, not one of those ego driven. That wasn't going to cause me to make a decision for that. I told them this is going to be for you and it's for legacy. So we stepped back into that. Took us 8 years before we've done any changes whatsoever. Just this past week, we went ahead and broke ground on what the remodel of that building would look like. I kept the old name. We're Metro Life Church. They were Grace Church. I kept Grace a Metro Life Church for all of these years because I didn't want to make too many changes. Even though a handful of people stayed with us during these last 8 years, I didn't want to make too many changes. I wanted to honor the old guard. I wanted to honor my dad and mom, honor the people that stayed with my dad and mom when I left for, 15 years. So I wanted to honor them by not making too many changes. And now we're going to go ahead and do so. We set it all up. It's very honoring from one generation to the next. And I'm the pastor. My dad's out of the picture. He passed in 2020. But I'm still going to keep Dad's name up there, keep his image up there, his likeness. We got the street named after him right in front of the place of the whole church. So it's all about honor. It's about making sure the last generation is being always recognized for their accomplishment, so that then the generation behind me, which is my son and my daughters and their husbands, that's going to be something that they understand. Right at the top of the founder's mentality was one of honor and one of legacy. And we got to fight for that every day. So Jason, this has been great, man. This has been great. I so appreciate being able to connect with you like this. We'll have to do something a little bit more on the whole multi-generational deal at another time. And I'd love to have my son in here with me, because I think right there, Chris is 30, you're in your 40s, I'm in my 60s. There's great things that people need to know, key nuggets, what's in your heart, what's been poured into you to help the next generation step into something that has been ultimately built by a family member and the kingdom of heaven, so that the kingdom of heaven continues. I think you've got some great wisdom there.
Oh, thank you. And I've learned a lot here just listening from you. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this and sharing what you did. You
got it. That's it, guys. Appreciate you watching another episode of The Family Business with the Alessis. And I'm so glad that I had my chance today to be, with Jason Law of World Compassion. God bless.
Hey there, if you enjoyed this episode of the Family Business Podcast with the Alessis, then you'll want to know we've got more insight, more encouragement, more great conversations that we can have on Sundays, and even some surprises coming your way. So you want to make sure you subscribe to our channel and watch one of these next videos here next, because remember, family is everybody's business.